I don't even know where to begin with this commentary. The video I'm covering is that bad. So, a user named Renee made this video criticizing defenders of the character Jax from the Amazing Digital Circus, and early on, the audience hears this comment.
Also, I want to make it very clear I intend to be nice when talking about this because a lot of people who are participating in this discourse are young. They most likely have issues of never getting justice when it comes to what they've been through, and it's just something they need to work out and unpack in therapy.
This isn't even the only time she says something like this, by the way. Now, had it just been that disclaimer, I'm not going to sit here and act like I wouldn't have found it a little strange to mention this, although it is at the very least understandable to give that qualifier if it is impacting how you're constructing the video. But, as already established, that's not exactly what happens. Later on, she makes a reference to people never receiving justice for actions that they've suffered from, and because of that, they latch on to these fictional characters.
With these type of people in fandom who have hypersensitivity, entitlement of being seen as a good person, they more often than not have some type of warped sense of social justice with very clear cognitive biases. These cognitive biases can be based on bitterness they never received any justice for what happened to them that they can see like happen to their favorite fictional character that they latch on to, and therefore that's why they're virtual signaling about something whatever.
A few questions should be asked regarding these statements. Among them, what does that have to do with anything? If you're able to show these people are wrong, which she does attempt to do throughout the video, even if, as the fact I'm commentating on it should reveal, I don't feel she does a very good job, then why not stick to that as opposed to speculating about their motivations? Especially given how abhorrent the actions you're assuming they went through are. I do apologize if I happen to be misreading this. However, it very much sounds like you are essentially saying the reason why many people disagree with you about a cartoon rabbit is because they were
abused at age 6 or molested at 12.
And that seems like a leap when you could just conclude they have other reasons to disagree with you that don't involve experiencing personal trauma. However, at the very least, this notion might be more understandable if any reasons were properly given as to why the audience should accept it. To explain just how bad this video is in that regard, despite this video being about Jack's defenders, only one is specifically shown. For those curious, it's a TikTok comment where somebody says they don't feel sorry for Gangle because the character is pushing 30. Following a critique of this person's comment, we then get a completely citationless declarative statement.
It's not that they try to say, oh, well, she just needs to get away from him if she doesn't like being treated that way.
They do? Can I see some examples, please? You've already established you're perfectly fine with doing such a thing, so why is it only done one time throughout the entirety of this video? Here are some more examples.
You will be gaslit to high heavens with all sorts of mental gymnastics into believing you're a terrible person for saying this fictional character who did objectively bad things you would never condone in real life is a horrible person.
Up next, an unstoppable science fiction boy is attacking our nation's final line of defense. Will we all fall to his deadly touch?
But first, something silly.
What do you mean, but first? I already said up next. You always do this.
I don't always do shit. Don't gaslight me.
Gaslighting doesn't exist. You made it up because you're fucking crazy.
Jax from the Amazing Digital Circus is a character that has always been under controversy with the fan base since the release of the second episode, where you genuinely had fans believing his character was retconned. From the pilot, which is technically the first episode, a lot of people got the impression that he was just basically an edgier Bugs Bunny.
Just want to jump in real quick and say, the pilot wasn't technically the first episode, it just was the first episode. Check the playlist on Glitch's channel. The first episode is just labeled Pilot. Meanwhile, episode 2 is given a numerical value, showing it is supposed to be the second part of this story.
That was when fans got really upset with him, saying that he was being completely out of character and that he was retconned. As the series got closer to an end, his supporters definitely got a lot more protective over Jax. And these supporters were ready to clap back at any form of criticism of his behavior and how he treated the characters, specifically the female members of the cast, even stepping into blatant misogyny themselves, wanting to blame the femme-presenting characters for how Jax behaved. Ever since the finale episode came out, they have gotten, like, in droves, taken this pseudo-intellectual route, trying to say anybody who hates him or just, wants to say he's a bad person because XYZ. You have Jax defenders saying, oh, you're just doing that because he's such a complex, morally great character, you don't understand him.
All of those clips were in the first 5 minutes of the video, by the way. And this would be understandable if these concepts later got elaborated on. However, they aren't. The video also uses the term parasocial numerous times, and never in a way that makes much sense.
The Amazing Digital Circus is finally over, and ever since the release of the last episode in theaters, Jack's defenders have become even more insufferable with any criticism to his character. Insufferable as in they take it so seriously, and they have this parasocial, weird attitude of going around and telling everybody they have no empathy or sympathy for people who suffered abuse, which, again, that is parasocial and weird. Now, getting really defensive because he's your favorite fictional character and it feels like people hating him somehow feel like they're hating you is always a very serious problem. It's parasocial. So the people who don't like Jax, they are not lacking in empathy. They have a better grasp on it than the parasocial weirdos that want to defend him. The other problem is having this blatant arrogance that you know perfectly the content of someone's moral fiber simply because of how they treat Jax. That is just parasocial and weird.
But you speculating on the trauma of people who defend Jax isn't? And regarding all of these statements, yeah, everyone's relationship with Jax is parasocial by definition. Parasocial relationships are just one-sided relationships where neither party knows each other personally, unless you can point me to somebody who actually knows the fictional character from the Amazing Digital Circus on a personal level. Everyone's relationship with him is parasocial.
See, this is why I assume a lot of these people are just young and they haven't consumed a diverse range of media to explore what a complex character is. If you need an example of a complex character to do a character study so you can better grasp what is a complex character, look at Alucard from Hellsing. Alucard is considered a very deeply complex character because beneath his arrogant and sadistic exterior, he has his own internal conflict of self-hatred, a paradoxical respect for humanity, and a deep-seated death wish. While Alucard does indulge and find pleasure in being a monster, at the same time, he does have regrets of throwing away his humanity out of fear and cowardice during his execution as Vlad the Impaler.
One of the main points of this video is that people in general care far more about actions in real life versus those done by fictional characters, to the point where they're even willing to condemn human beings for what they've done, even if they don't mind seeing those same actions represented in fiction. Earlier, a comment was even shown of them specifically mentioning that people will gaslight others into being fine with actions they would never condone in real life. And that is returned to later.
If Jax's behavior is demonstrated by any real-life person on the internet that was canceled, nobody would like that person at all. Nobody would bring up their trauma to get them to stop being mean. More often than not, they will come to these real-life people who have similar trauma to Jax. When it's time for them to get canceled, people will openly mock them for their trauma and tell them that they deserve to suffer that trauma. But God forbid you give that energy to a character that does not exist and the internet thinks you're a monster for hurting the precious boo-boo bunny boy. But do that to a real-life person getting canceled, you will get back pats and accolades because apparently you're doing a community service by attacking someone's real life trauma. But yeah, of course, when it comes to real life people getting canceled, you do have real life people trying to defend them because they have a strong cognitive bias to the person getting canceled, and they will try to come up with excuses, or they will try victim blaming or saying that people who are criticizing do not have any clue of what they're talking about.
Okay, that entire statement parses bizarrely, to say the very least. What you seem to be saying is that, with exceptions, people tend to be more okay with sympathizing with those who do bad actions in fiction versus real life? Well, first off, let's ignore the fact that you do take some time to acknowledge this is far from a universal, in that you directly mention even the worst monsters of the modern era do have their defenders, which you provide zero examples for, by the way, just as you don't have any examples for people who mock the trauma of these canceled individuals, while also demanding respect and empathy regarding the trauma of fictional characters. I'm not even going to sit here and deny that such people might exist. I mean, there are 8 billion people on this planet. It wouldn't surprise me if one of them was like this. Just statistically, it seems inevitable. This is something they do later, by the way, going on this rant about how if you've condemned other fictional characters for things you're fine with Jax doing, you're a total hypocrite.
When it comes to someone having these type of cognitive biases, it's pretty much a litmus test to see how accurate their morals really are. Which, Jax fans, here's a bitter pill to swallow. You are not a good person because you're trying so hard to protect him from criticism because, from your perspective, oh, he has trauma, they don't understand. If you know damn well you would not approve of his actions when it comes to another character that you just don't like, or you do have a history of calling out characters who have done similar actions as Jax, you're kind of a hypocrite.
Right! Almost by definition.
Can I please get some people who fit into this category? Because as of right now, I'm confused as to why such a person would even exist. Again, I'm not arguing it's impossible you've encountered someone of this sort. However, the reason why a specific name would be preferred here is because without it, for all your audience knows, you're just making up people to criticize. And instead just zero in on the fact that, yeah, obviously people would be more comfortable with this happening in fiction versus reality, because in fiction, nobody is getting hurt. You say that Jax not being real is the important factor here, but if anything, it's more that his victims aren't real. Meaning more sympathy can be given to the person doing this harm, since said harm is completely limited to a fictional world. But the reason why this is so notable is because your example of a complex character is somebody who, by your own description, used to be Vlad the Impaler. A person who is believed to have killed around 80,000 people. In real life, by the way, not in a piece of media. Why is he worthy of sympathy for killing actual human beings when fictionally represented, but Jax, again, whose victims are entirely non-existent in reality, receives this harsh treatment?
Which just makes this weird discourse, pretty ironic, because you have his fans and defenders feeling entitled for you to show empathy for Jax because he has trauma, when Jax himself cannot show empathy to the people he is actively traumatizing.
Why does that inherently mean he's not worthy of empathy? What you're essentially saying is that because Jax is a bad person, it's okay to treat him as he does others. But if he's such a bad person, why is repeating his actions even towards him acceptable?
And the idea that Jax is basically sexually harassing Gangle, that is backed up when there are 2 lines in the show where he threatens to divulge some really embarrassing information involving figurines. And if you count their dialogue and the voting videos canon, he threatened to show everybody her little blue sketchbook. Going off the theme of the blackmail and Jax calling her an embarrassing little freak, the little blue sketchbook must be where she's drawing her porn. Threatening to share sexually embarrassing information about somebody to try to get them to do what you want is sexual harassment, and it's really fucked up that Jax thinks acceptable to do that because Jax believes the person he is doing that to likes him and enjoys being humiliated by him.
Okay, first off, you interpret the figurine comment as sexual, but the show doesn't give you any reason to assume that. It could have been similar to, say, that one Spaceballs scene where Lord Helmet is caught playing with toys.
So, Princess Vespa, at last I have you in my clutches to have my way with you, the way I want to. No, please, leave me alone. No, you are mine.
Not so fast, Helmet.
Lone Star.
Yes, it's me. I'm here to save my girlfriend. Hi, honey.
Now you are going to die.
Oh! Hey, what'd you do to my friend?
The same thing I'm going to do to you, big boy. Oh, and you too.
Oh!
Now, Princess Vespa, at last we are alone.
Oh, no, I hate you. Leave me alone.
Yet, I find you strangely attractive. Of course you do. Druish princesses are often attracted to money and power, and I have both, and you know it.
Oh, leave me alone.
No, kiss me.
No, yes, no, yes, no, yes.
Oh, your helmet is so big.
Lord Helmet, what?
You need it on the bridge, sir.
Knock on my door. Knock next time.
Yes, sir.
Did you see anything?
No, sir. I didn't see you playing with your dolls again.
Good.
The same is true with the journal. You just assume its contents are pornographic in nature, but nothing in the show backs this up. And there are numerous other reasons it could be embarrassing. Off the very top of my head, maybe it's older artwork that Gangle doesn't feel is up to their modern standards. Or maybe it's deeply personal in some other way. Similar to the well-known secret diary trope. In fact, it being related to quality makes quite a bit more sense than you seem to realize, given multiple artists have either destroyed or expressed a desire to destroy work they were involved with because they feel it was, if I may be scientific, utter dog shit. The story of a novelist burning his own work because a friend of his said it was terrible comes to mind. Here's All Things Lost discussing that situation.
The Temple at Thatch is a lost novel by English author Evelyn Waugh, best known for writing Brideshead Revisited, which has been turned into movies and TV shows. In 1925, after finishing The Temple at Thatch, Waugh gave the manuscript to fellow writer Harold Acton to review. Acton was brutally honest about his dislike of the novel, recommending Waugh print a few copies to give to close friends, then proceed to list off their least cultured friends. Acton's harsh criticism combined with Waugh's frustration at work and school led to him unsuccessfully attempting to end his own life, but not before burning the only copy of The Temple at Thatch.
There's also this famous story regarding George Lucas's dislike for the Star Wars Holiday Special.
George Lucas, as the creator of Star Wars, said himself, and these are his exact words, "If I had the time and a sledgehammer, I would track down every copy of that show and smash it."
This is because Star Wars Holiday Special is a work of infamously poor quality, not because it's embarrassing to George Lucas personally in any way outside of the fact that his franchise was involved with it.
In episode 6, when she's alone with Zubul, she's having a panic attack, anticipating that Jax is going to severely hurt her in retaliation for refusing to team up with him. If he wasn't hurting her that badly, like a lot of you want to claim that, she wouldn't be that scared of him, anticipating physical pain from him.
The entire premise of that conversation is a totally hypothetical dislike Jax has, though. Gangle isn't even sure it exists.
Do you think Jax is gonna be mad that I didn't team up with him?
I wouldn't worry about him right now. It's all just a game in the end.
It's Jax, though. He probably wants revenge, and he's gonna make it painful.
This isn't showing Jax as a character treating Gangle a certain way so much as it's revealing their own anxieties. For point of comparison, there's an episode of That 70s Show called That 70s Musical, where the character Fez begins to feel like his friends don't want to see him perform and actually don't particularly like him even. And we see a fantasy of his made up not of character moments that are supposed to show us how those in Fez's life really act, but instead the result of him allowing these anxieties to paint a picture of how they're talking. To put it another way, none of these are supposed to be character moments.
Ooh, guys, Fez's concert's about to start. Which means we have 3 more hours without his sorry ass. Let's eat his candy.
Yeah,
My name is Fez. I love candy. Or good day. I say good day.
Yeah, and the best part is, that idiot actually thinks I'm his friend. Like I care. I wish he were dead. Oh, hey, we should kill him.
Even those of you who are not familiar with that 70s show could likely infer this is not how Fez's friends normally talk about him, because, well, they're his friends. In fact, the episode ends with a reminder of Fez's friendship with them, as it turns out the real reason they hadn't yet shown up to the performance Fez wanted them to attend wasn't because they were planning on skipping it, but was instead the result of simple lateness, originating from them going after somebody Fez doesn't like.
Hey, Fez. Where the hell have you been? Well, we were on our way here when we passed by your music teacher's house.
And I said, Fez hates that guy. Let's toilet paper it, so...
So we did!
Now, this is not to say that what Gangle does feel has no basis in rationality, but you can't use the existence of these emotions as a basis for them being rational in of itself. That's just circular logic.
To continue with the topic of victim blaming Jax's victim, let's talk about Ribbit. Oh, this sweet angel of a frog. All she did was be available for him to be vulnerable with. Jax defenders will blame Ribbit for Jax shutting her out, saying things like, well, it's her own fault. She should have never brought up doing something that you regret you can't fix. That is so stupid. Talk about not having any empathy. Ribbit clearly initiated this conversation with Jax because she felt very close to him. I mean, before they sat down on her bed, he said, I'm glad I was able to cheer you up. Ribbit must have been in a bit of a funky mood, and Jax is able to bring her out of it. In this moment, Ribbit wanted to open herself up emotionally and be vulnerable with Jax, and in turn, she encouraged him to find that safety and comfort with her. Ribbit trusted him, and she wanted Jax to trust her. But of course, you have a lot of people who defend Jax, tried to spin this into a negative, just like how Jax did when he was gaslighting Ribbit about what was going on between them in the snowy mountain scene. All she did was open up and try to be vulnerable with somebody she thought she had a close mutual connection with, and it backfired horribly on her because of Jax wanting to punish her.
No, it backfired because in the process, Jax ended up revealing information he would have rather not, and feels uncomfortable getting close to Ribbit, or anybody else for that matter, it's implied, because he's worried he'll end up doing the same thing again. Hence his line during the snowy mountain scene where you say he's gaslighting Ribbit.
I just want to be friends again.
What, so you could pry into my personal life and hold it over my head?
But why did you conclude it was gaslighting and not, say, an incorrect or irrational interpretation of what happened?
After Ribbit abstracted, he didn't think about how his actions affected her. He doubled down and continued that behavior onto the next person that offered to be available for him when he needed someone to talk to.
Yeah, it turns out the guy who freaked the fuck out when he accidentally revealed aspects of his life he had no intention of doing because he got emotionally vulnerable with somebody isn't all that interested in getting emotionally vulnerable with other people, especially following the abstraction of the person he already got emotionally vulnerable with. This makes perfect sense from Jack's perspective. He got emotionally vulnerable with Ribbit. He revealed something he had no intention of sharing. He freaks out and freezes out Ribbit. Then Ribbit abstracts, according to you, because Jax froze her out after Jax revealed information to her because he became vulnerable, and now he doesn't want to be emotionally vulnerable with other people or open about his emotions more generally because of how badly it went the previous time he did so. From Jack's perspective, trying to be emotionally open with others would basically be this.
Wise guy, eh? Ow! Ow! Ow!
Except with the added fear of possibly hurting them in reaction to the point where they fucking abstract.
And it's not like Jax is ignorant to his own fault. He knows he's to blame for Ribbit and Kaufmo abstracting. Why else would you think he got so offended when Pomni asked him if his behavior is like what causes people to abstract in the first place? He got extremely defensive and angry, and that's strictly because of guilt. He knows he's at fault for what happened to Ribbit. And he also knows he's also at fault for Kaufmo abstracting.
Okay, first off, where did you get the idea that it was Jack's fault Kaufmo abstracted. That's something the video doesn't even elaborate on. It just asserts such a thing without any explanation. As for why Jax was so defensive about Pomni saying his behavior is why people abstract, maybe that's just a serious accusation in his mind? As I pointed out back in my first Brian Mullins video, people who are falsely accused of actions tend to get more angry and defensive than those who are innocent. In fact, according to one study on this very topic, despite the fact that anger at accusations is seen as a sign of guilt in the minds of a large amount of the population, the guilty are the least likely to be angry in response to being accused. Or to quote from the abstract of that study, false accusations of wrongdoing are common and can have grave consequences. In 6 studies, we document a worrisome paradox in perceivers' subjective judgment of a suspect's guilt. Specifically, we find that people, including online panelists, and working professionals such as fraud investigators and auditors, use suspects' angry responses to accusations as cues of guilt. However, we find that such anger is an invalid cue of guilt and is instead a valid cue of innocence. Accused individuals, university students, and online panelists are angrier when they are falsely versus accurately accused.
Yes, Jax has been through trauma, but guess what? Ragatha has trauma too. Just like Jax, she was also emotionally and verbally abused by her mother. And do the knives mean anything? Ragatha was probably held at knife point by her mom at some point trying to regain control over Ragatha.
I mean, maybe, but that's only one possible interpretation of a very esoteric scene. Using it as evidence for any piece of information regarding these characters seems like a reach, if only because what's being shown is so non-literal. For those unaware, that scene comes from episode 8, where Cain is showing them what amounts to terrifying visions. And, well, here are the ones that aren't Ragatha. Given to our knowledge, Pomni has no trauma involving being eaten by alligators, nor has Jax ever experienced having his skin peeled off. It's obvious this cannot be seen in the same way, for example, a typical flashback would. It's obvious these are merely supposed to be what Cain thinks would horrify these specific characters. Now, why they'd find this horrifying, or even why Cain chose these specific images to show them, is definitely up for interpretation. However, at that point, you're just using fan speculation, which there's nothing wrong with doing, but you can't treat it as something that's on the same level of genuine information. My final thoughts are that this video, to be very blunt, was an incredibly frustrating watch. Good night and good luck.